Seaworld in San Diego, California has been called the world's finest marine life park. Here you'll find some of the most interesting inhabitants of the world's oceans.
Can you think of an animal that lives in a shell like a snail, that has tentacles like an octopus, and that has a beak like a parrot? Well, if that sounds like an animal from prehistoric times, you're right.
It's a chambered nautilus, one of the oldest living creatures on Earth. Fossils have been found dating it back more than 180 million years. You may have admired a nautilus shell at some time without realizing it once belonged to a fascinating living animal. A cephalopod like the octopus and squid, the nautilus shares their tentacles and a number of other characteristics, but it's the only living member of the family which has retained its shell. Nautiluses live in the deepest waters of the Pacific Ocean and have only recently been studied in the laboratory. So Seaworld's large collection provides a rare research opportunity for aquarium supervisor Carl Jantsch.
What we're doing is measuring these nautilus in relation to time, measuring their growth rates. We're getting a total length on the animal, measuring the millimeters. This one's 14 millimeters long, and also the width of the shell. And this guy is 6.8 across the opening, the largest place. We're also measuring the volume of the animal by seeing how much water he'll displace. Also, nobody really knows exactly how big they are when they're hatched.
But researchers have found that the nautilus has developed a unique system of locomotion, complete with built-in jet propulsion.
Right there you can see the funnel of the nautilus. This is what he uses to propel himself forwards and backwards. You can see right below his eye and all along the lip of the shell, that area there that's moving is called the mantle. He takes water in from the sides and pumps it at that opening in the front, and that's how he propels himself. It's kind of like a form of jet propulsion.
The nautilus moves like the octopus and squid, but with far less speed, carrying the heavy shell that is its only protection. This same shell, however, gives the nautilus a mechanism for incredible mobility. It can propel itself vertically even faster and farther than it can go forward and backwards. The nautilus spends most of its time at great depths, down 400 to 2,000 feet, but it can rise more than 1,500 feet to feed just 60 feet below the surface. This amazing ability is made possible by shell chambers that act like a submarine's ballast tanks. I talked with Carl about the nautilus's unusual shell.
Okay, this is a cutaway view of a chambered nautilus, and you can see the symmetrical chambers in here. These chambers are filled with gas, and the connective tissue through here has a liquid in it. And when the nautilus wants to increase its density or sink, it puts water pressure inside this tube going through all these chambers. Thus, it puts pressure on the gas, and the volume of the gas is decreased, making the shell heavier. And when he wants to rise up again, he releases the pressure and takes the liquid out of that tube, increasing the area of the gas in the chambers, making it more buoyant.
These chambers are so perfectly symmetrical.
Yeah, in fact, they are. They're mathematically, this is a perfect curve. Of course, these animals have been working on it 200 million years, so no wonder they've gotten it right.
The shell is just one part of the nautilus's body that serves multiple functions. The eye is another.
Well, the eye is a very simple eye. It has no lens or iris. It functions just like a pinhole camera. It picks up images, but they do not rely on their vision for finding food. They have a very well-adapted sense of smell. In fact, the little tentacle sticking out right behind the eye there's one on each side. That tentacle is for smell. They pick up odors with it. You can see it twitching. By twitching, it creates a little bit of a water current, so it's always coming in contact with different molecules in the water and tasting them. You can see this nautilus coming down to the bottom here has its tentacles extended. They do this in finding food. When one of the tentacles touches a piece of food, like he did right there, turns around and grabs it with the other tentacles. You can see each tentacle is encased in a sheath. At the base, you see the broad, thick area. It's a sheath, and those tentacles are retractable. So they extend quite a distance outside the sheath. You can see the big, long ones on the bottom, below the siphon or the funnel. When they're looking for food, they drag these two tentacles along the bottom or dangle them in the water like that. Once they grasp a piece of food, they draw it into their beak, which is in the center of their tentacles. It's a very strong, partly calcified beak, and very sharp, and they bite off hunks of the fish or crab or lobster and swallow them. Okay, we can see two of them are fighting over a fish. They've been filmed in the wild doing this too, over bait. So it's much easier for a nautilus to take a bite or take some food away from another nautilus than for him to catch it himself.
While nautiluses may fight with each other, they're well protected from predators by their shell. The shell not only serves as a sturdy mobile home, but a historical record as well.
Looking at this nautilus, we can see this well-developed leathery hood on top of the shell. You can see as I tap it, it closes down and covers his eyes, and he pulls in his tentacles, and they're encased in the sheath. This is one of their defense mechanisms against predators. This is a very tough, leathery hide. It can take a lot of abuse, so the animal is basically protected inside its shell. You can also see on this animal a line right along here. This is a trauma line. We can tell from this trauma line that this is the size the animal was when he was taken out of the wild. And since he's been at Seaworld, he's grown this much, which is quite a bit. Also, if you look close, you can see these brown bands on the animal along here. These bands help camouflage the animal by breaking up his contour in the water. But once an animal reaches sexual maturity, and you can see he reached sexual maturity right after he came to Seaworld, they stop forming these brown bands. You can see the rest of the shell is pearly white. Also, you can see this black coloration on the shell here. This black coloration occurs during trauma in an animal. These animals, for some reason, like to chew on each other's shell, maybe get a little calcium. It doesn't hurt the animal, but when he regenerates his shell, he lays down this black coloration on the shell. Also, as an animal reaches the end of its life expectancy, it forms a black ring around the edge of the shell. We can tell when an animal's getting ready to die.
A preserved nautilus gives us the inside story.
Okay, this is a preserved specimen of a nautilus. You can see the hood on it, the tentacle sheaths here, the mantle funnel, which it used to propel itself backwards and forwards. And up under the mantle, you can just barely see it, but this is where the beak is, surrounded by these tentacles. If you take this animal out of the shell, you can see it's basically composed of two parts, the head region and the body region. The internal organs, the heart, the intestines, and everything is in this area, which is encased in the mantle. This is the mantle here, and this is all inside the nautilus's shell.
Since mating must also take place outside their shells, male and female literally put their heads together about parenthood.
We really can't be positive as to what we're seeing, but when nautilus do join head-to-head, this is possibly a breeding behavior. The class Cephalopoda, which means foothead, all their organs are right there in the head region. The male has an organ called a spadex, which is an intermission organ, and they join head-to-head, and the male transfers sperm packet to the female with that organ. And it's possible that's what they're doing there. And in nature, you frequently see more than two individuals get together. Some chemical may be released by the female to say she's in a reproductive cycle, and it would excite the males in the area, and they would all rush to her and try to mate with her. There are some differences between the sexes of nautilus. The nautilus in my left hand here is a male, and the one in my right hand is a female. Okay, you can see that the female does not have the broad hood or opening in the shell as the male does. The female organ is located below the beak instead of lateral or beside the beak. Therefore, she doesn't need to have that broad hood like the male does.
We have learned a great deal about this ancient and mysterious creature of the deep, but so far no one has unlocked the secrets of hatching the Nautilus in captivity. The Nautilus produces far fewer eggs than the huge masses of the octopus and squid, and while Carl Jantsch has collected eggs to study, none of them has been fertile. But Carl and his colleagues still hope to eventually obtain a fertile egg and have the first captive baby Nautilus right here at Seaworld. For a marine biologist who never thought he'd even see a Nautilus, that would be a real achievement. And for the rest of us, it would be a fascinating new chapter in a story survive began before dawn in life. San Diego's Seaworld has been called the finest marine life park in the world. Found here are some of the most fascinating creatures of the sea. We'll meet one of them today.
Over the centuries, the octopus has gained the reputation of being one of the deadly monsters of the deep. This is really an unfair characterization. Today at Seaworld, I'm going to let an octopus wrap its tentacles around my arm, and I'm going to tell you what these marvelous creatures are really like.
The versatile octopus inhabits every ocean at all latitudes, from shallow surface waters to depths of 17,000 feet. There are more than 100 different species, ranging in size from under 6 inches to nearly 30 feet, as measured from the outstretched tentacle to tentacle. Though the octopus is highly mobile, it prefers waiting patiently on the ocean floor to gather food rather than swimming for it. Changing color and shape to match its surroundings, the octopus ambushes crabs, clams, and shrimp from the den it makes for itself in crevices or burrows. This reclusive existence also helps protect the soft-bodied octopus from the teeth of its numerous enemies. Aquarium supervisor Carl Jantsch took me behind the scenes at Seaworld for a close look at this surprisingly intelligent and personable creature.
A little bit different. If you want to climb up here, you can take a look at them. Some animals they seem to be friendly. Some would rather have nothing to do with you. You can see that the texture is really like wet leather. It even feels like wet leather if you'd like to feel this animal. Have very, very muscular arms with hundreds and hundreds of suckers on them. All octopus have 8 tentacles. That's a characteristic trait of their subclass, and it differentiates them from squid and cuttlefish.
The appearance of the octopus looks less bizarre when we find out what all of its moving parts are really for.
This is our Pacific giant octopus. This is one of the largest species of octopus in the world. Right now we're looking at the head area of the octopus, specifically the eye and the mantle and funnel. This is what the octopus does when it respires. You can see the large slit kind of below the funnel area. The octopus inhales as he's doing now, takes in water, passes it over his gills, and exhales through that funnel. This funnel is also used when the animal has to make a quick dash and get away from a potential predator. He's able to force the water fast enough through that funnel that it acts like a jet propulsion system and shoots him backwards through the water. The octopus relies heavily on its vision. The octopus uses its eye to recognize shapes as far as predator and prey. That slit across the middle of the eye is the pupil. They also have a very sensitive nervous system, and their sense of touch or their feeling in their tentacles is very, very advanced, and it is able to differentiate between quite a variety of different shapes and textures just by feel alone. Right here you can see the suckers. The suckers are used in attaching itself to objects and also in holding prey. You can see the webbing between the arms of this octopus. This has a function of being like or acting like an umbrella. When the octopus is after an animal like a fish, one that's highly mobile, what it does is it spreads his arms out, forming like an umbrella with this membrane between the arms, and tries to corner the fish or animal in a crevice and throws its body over top of him. The octopus is also the smartest animal in the sea except for marine mammals. Only the dolphins, whales, sea lions, and porpoises are more intelligent. The octopus has been used in many experiments involving learning ability, intelligence, and it rates very high. You can see how rubbery the octopus appears. Its tentacles just kind of roll out as it moves along. The head changes shape. The octopus is an escape artist. Even though this octopus weighs around 20 pounds, he could probably squeeze through a hole no more than, say, 3 or 4 inches square.
With its numerous adaptations, it's easy to see why the octopus has been able to build a successful lifestyle for itself in every ocean of the world. And of all the attributes the octopus has, perhaps none is more fascinating to us than those 8 tentacles with their incredible strength and dexterity. And here at Seaworld, I got a first-hand experience of how strong they really are.
He's really sensing us, or he really is picking up a lot about us.
It feels like a wet chamois. That's just what it feels like. Now, how much does he weigh?
This one here probably weighs 30 or 40 pounds. This is the Pacific giant octopus, and they've been recorded up to 100.
It's hard to even remove your hand when he's got a good grip on you. As much as I pull, I can't seem to get loose unless I were to take my other hand and pull him off. And yet, he can release very easily. How does he do that?
Well, there's a little muscle attached to the center of the sucker, and it works on suction. He puts his this little sucker disc on your arm or on an area in your hand, and then that muscle pulls the back of the disc away from your hand, so it's just relying on the suction.
He's really got a hold of me. Now, look at the red spots on my hand.
Yeah, It's pulling so hard, it's pulling the blood to the surface of the skin. They've determined that some squid or octopus, probably giant squid, get very, very long. Wow, he really did put some red marks. Because when they catch whales, the sperm whale, they have scars on their body from battles in the deep sea from giant squids, where the squid actually pulls hard enough to tear the flesh of a sperm whale.
If we left our arms in there, this octopus could come right up out of the tank using us.
Yes, he would.